Madam President, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak to this proposition that this House would call Edward Snowden a hero. I would also like to register a faint distress because a member of your standing committee, Mr. Charles Vaughan, who was the whistleblower's best friend last night, buying the Sam Adams Associates free drinks in the bar, is speaking for the opposition tonight. And I would just like to recollect the Sam Adams Associates awarded Chelsea Manning the 2014 Award for Integrity and Intelligence in the Oxford Union last night, another honour to a whistleblower of global recognition. So thank you for hosting that. And to pick up on one further comment from Mr. Vaughan, he was talking about what is a definition of a hero. And in the best traditions of Wikipedia, students' best friend, and in order to attempt to help my failing memory as a very aging classicist from the other place, I had a little quick Google this afternoon and reminded myself that hero comes from the ancient Greek word heros. And the definition on Wikipedia I found fascinating. I would like to draw this to the House's attention tonight when we're trying to define exactly the nature of what Mr. Snowden has done. So Wikipedia, the fount of all knowledge, said, heroes, characters who, in the face of danger or adversity, or from a position of weakness, display courage and the will for self-sacrifice for the greater good of humanity. Now, I cannot see how anyone can fail to see that Mr. Snowden acted in that character. But I would like to speak to that now, in my very brief time. And I'm aware of illustrious opposition. I'm sure we will hear great arguments about his oath to the Constitution, his oath of secrecy to the American people. This is a young man who has grown up in the traditions of the internet. The idea of transparency and free flows of information and democracy, the democratizing of information by that means. And I would remind the opposition as well that when you join, apparently, one of the US intelligence agencies, you do not make an oath of secrecy. You swear an oath to the Constitution. And this is precisely what it has been reported that Edward Snowden, and what he has said himself, has been trying to do is to protect the terms of that Constitution, which he would assess, and the information that has already been released has demonstrated clearly is being eroded by the actions of the NSA over the last decade or over the last few decades. And we will no doubt hear as well from certain people tonight that in the UK, we have the Official Secrets Act, which is there to protect our national security and our economic well-being, and that intelligence officers who work for MI5, MI6, or GCHQ sign the notification of the Official Secrets Act and have a lifelong duty to uphold that. Well, yes, I did sign the Official Secrets Act, and I have always protected official secrets. What I did not sign up to do, however, is to cover up crime and incompetence that results in the deaths of innocents and the breaching of UK law. And if I were to cover that up, surely I'm no different from any complicity, any criminal complicit in a crime. And certainly I could not rely on a very, very noble piece of law, the Nuremberg Principles, that I was just keeping quiet. I was not rocking the boat, and I was just following orders. I would suggest that whistleblowers have a democratic duty as citizens of a democracy to come forth with evidence of crime in order to improve the functioning of their democracy and in order potentially to improve the functioning of the intelligence agencies, which are there specifically to protect that way of life and that democracy. And yet, in the UK, certainly, we have these bodies of oversight. We have these mechanisms that are supposed to make sure our spies adhere to the law. But I know from the inside that these can be gamed by the spies, and that the bodies of oversight can be lied to by the spies, as has been acknowledged by a number of former senior spooks in the UK over the last decade, about issues as serious as torture, or going into an illegal war on the basis of fake intelligence, or kidnapping and extraordinary rendition. These are serious matters. These go to the heart of what we as a country, as a democracy, stand for, and what our laws are supposed to protect. How do I know all this? Well, I used to work for MI5. I was a British intelligence officer in the 1990s, the only marginally golden ethical era of that organisation, by the way, over the last century. And yet, despite that, I and my former partner, a man called David Shaler, saw so many things going wrong, we felt compelled to blow the whistle, which meant that under the law, we broke the law and we faced years in prison. So to avoid that, we literally went on the run preemptively. We didn't Edward Snowden, but we did it back in 1997. We went on the run, we lived in hiding, we lived in exile, and David went to prison not once but twice. First of all, when the British failed to extradite him from France in 1998. And secondly, after he had returned voluntarily to face trial, to face the music, and he was inevitably convicted under the Official Secrets Act, because there is no public interest defense under the 1989 Official Secrets Act in this country. If you speak out, you are the criminal, not the people who commit the crimes. And we also realized from that period as well, when we were on the run, living in exile, living in hiding, what it is like to live without a sense of privacy. The sense that your home might be bugged, your communications certainly will be bugged, your best friends might be turned against you to report back on you. And that was pervasive. That was like living under the Stasi. I know what it's like to live with the suspicion, at least, that you are constantly under surveillance. You have no privacy. You can't talk freely in your own home. And that is what we are all facing now. We know, thanks to Mr. Edward Snowden, because that is what our listening agencies, the NSA and GCHQ and all the other alphabet soups, are now doing to all our information. And this, I would suggest, is the key threat to our very civilization, our very way of life, our very democratic values. Because if we feel we have no privacy, if we feel we cannot freely read and write and communicate and speak, associate and plan, get involved in political activism without some spy agency somewhere in the world listening and reading and reporting everything we say, then we have no freedom. We begin to self-censor. This is what we saw under Nazi Germany in the 1930s. This is what we saw in East Germany under the boot of the Stasi secret police. We self-censor. We lose that freedom of thought, all the basic freedoms our ancestors, over hundreds of years in the West, have fought and bled and died for. That is what we have lost already. And thanks to Mr. Snowden, we know what we are facing, and we have a chance to push back. Because we don't have those freedoms, we have no democracy, we have no basic way of life. We need free media. So just to reiterate and to urge this House to support the proposition that this House would call Edward Snowden a hero, let's go back to my frayed classical education. Heroes. To remind you, characters who, in the face of danger or adversity, or from a position of weakness, display courage and the will for self-sacrifice for the greater good of humanity. I ask this House to vote for the proposition because I cannot think of a clearer definition of what a hero could be, and that hero is Edward Snowden. Thank you very much.